What is worship? I was pondering that today, trying to think, what is worship? How would you answer that? So I went on a bit of a quest today. In a secular world view, they look at it like, somebody's kissing someone else's feet, or, they're all the way extended down, and I worship you, kind of like that. I am not worthy, like Wayne and Garth. What's their names? Wayne's World, like in Wayne's World with Wayne and Garth. Not worthy, I'm not worthy. So some people think when you hear the word worship, that people out in the world, they think of this. Or maybe like the old Popeye cartoon. Do you remember the old Popeye cartoon where they'd be there, salami, 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 baloney? I was pondering that today, even just for my own self, just kind of identifying worship, pushing in more to get closer to God, and has been my desire. I remember years ago hearing that you could worship in anything and everything that you do if you do it as unto the Lord. Do it as unto the Lord, or you give it to the Lord. You have the right mindset that it can be a form of worship. I remember reading this many years ago and thinking that I can be worshiping and praising the Lord. I could be worshiping when I'm worshiping when I'm washing the dishes, worshiping when I'm washing, worshiping when I'm washing the dishes. That's what I'm trying to say. And how mind-blowing that was to think that I could worship or bring glory to God in everything that I did, just with the right mindset, with doing it as unto the Lord. And so that was a revolutionary way of looking at it. But I began to look closer today to see what is worship. And so I looked up a dictionary viewpoint, and it said that the feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity, as in the worship of God. That was the noun, and likewise the verb tense said to show reverence and adoration for a deity, to honor with religious rites. So two words popped out of this definition that were reverence and adoration. So I like those words, to think of worship as being reverence and adoration. It kind of it's a lot more descriptive to me of something that's always seemed kind of elusive, that people don't quite understand. Some people think that worship is a style of music that you hear on the radio or on church on a Sunday morning. It's something more than that. It's something deeper. So I like the words reverence and adoration. So in turn, I looked up reverence. And the definition of reverence was a deep respect for someone or something. And the verb tense was to regard or treat with deep respect. And likewise, I looked up adoration. And guess what it said? Deep love and respect. Bringing this all full circle back to the idea that worship really is a deep love and respect for something or someone or God. Some people think praise and worship, and they may get those two confused. Praise stems from recognizing the good acts of God. Worship is not a function of the acts of God. Worship comes from the core of who the worshiper is, what God means to them, from the core of who we are as worshipers, and what God means to us. What does God mean to you? I also found this definition that someone said, to put it simply, that worship is declaring the greatness of someone or something. The act of giving up your own glory so that everyone knows how awesome is the one that you're worshiping. Or to say that worship is bowing down to lift up. As in where it says in the Bible that I must decrease so that He can increase. To make ourselves lowly, to bow down, to give reverence, to show respect, so that God can be lifted up. To remember God and be thankful for Christ and our salvation. When it says bowing down, that's often what is found in the Bible, where it's talking about that Abraham worshipped God. When he came near, he bowed down to Him. He actually put his face to the ground. And in many other places where it shows worship in that sort of way, to bow down, to make yourself lower in the presence of your Lord. So beyond even just bowing down, there's many ways that we look at that we can worship today. And there are things like we can worship in music, with singing or playing instruments. We can worship by praying, preaching, teaching, reading the scriptures out loud. In a sermon, again, preaching, through giving, and through the sacraments of communion and other holy ceremonies. Because yes, worship is more than just songs that you hear on the radio or a style of music or the songs that they play on a Sunday morning at your church. Worship is a lifestyle. Worship is bowing down. Worship is decreasing so that God can increase. So the act of worshiping God can be just about anything that honors God. There's the worshiping like David did when David danced with all his might before the Lord, leaping and dancing. In Romans 12, 1-3, it says that, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, by means of reasonable service. Do not imitate the way of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may discern what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. For I say through the grace which is given to me to all of you, not to think of yourselves beyond what you ought to think, but to think soberly, every man according to the measure of faith which God has distributed to him. So we are to be a living sacrifice, laying down ourselves. But in order to do that, we have to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And how do you renew your mind? By reading the Word, staying in His presence, through prayers. And everything we do should be to the glory of God, as it says in 1 Corinthians. So I found this definition of worship that I kind of liked a lot. It said that bowing down in homage and laying down or giving up something you care about to honor God. That's a true sacrifice. Are we willing to give a sacrifice? At the very least an offering? Or just something? Anything? We have the story of Cain and Abel where that it says that now Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord, but Abel brought fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry. His face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it." See the difference between the two, Cain and Abel? So what Abel gave actually cost him something. Didn't seem to cost Cain anything or very much. Abel gave his firstborn. A lot of times you give that before you know whether there's anything else coming or know what else you're going to have, as in your first fruits. So I believe Cain didn't give his first fruits, the first of his crop, the best of his crop. I think he kept the best for himself and then waited around and gave God the leftovers. Abel gave a nice juicy cut of meat, marbled with fat. He gave his best. He gave his all. It says that Cain brought some of his fruit, not his first fruits, not his best. It was likely the leftovers, or maybe even the rotten fruit, or at the very least the fruit that had the blemishes and the bruises on it. God's not going to care anyway, so I'll just give him this. And God did care. It made a big difference. It makes a big difference in our life. What are we bringing to the Lord? Do we give him the leftovers in our day? A few minutes before we go to bed, say our quick little prayers and go to sleep? Or do we give him the best of our day? Do we give him the first fruits? Do we give him our praise and our honor? Or do we just give him whatever? Or as Jesus put it, yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. That's in John chapter 4. In spirit and in truth. You see, Jesus said that God is a spirit, so we should worship him in spirit. Or as the original translation would have put it, pneuma, or a gentle blast of wind. See, we're to worship spirit to spirit. We can worship physically, but what Jesus was talking about is what the true worship that the Father seeks is in spirit and in truth, not physical worship, not even the physical act of bowing down or putting your head to the floor or, salami, baloney. See, the Bible tells us that we are spirits inside of a body that have a soul, or will, or mind, or emotions. So our spirit man needs to connect with God, who is spirit, and worship him in spirit and in truth. Truth is that which is true. No facade or faking, and no ulterior motives, being consistent all the way through. See, God is seeking true worshipers. He's seeking true worship. God pursues you if you worship in spirit and truth. He's seeking you out. That's my prayer, that as the Lord guides me and leads me in this, that I become more of a true worshiper, worshiping in spirit and in truth. I hope that sharing that today, that's your goal as well. This has been the encouraging word.
And the people said, Amen.